The toast is toasting, the butter is buttering, I'm here, you're here, and so is your $1,400 third stimulus check. In this recording, we'll go over the breaking details about that $1,400 third stimulus check landing, that major recon win by Chuck Schumer on Monday, and what that means for fourth stimulus. Away we go into fourth stimulus. A major push is underway for fourth stimulus checks to have multiple stimulus checks. I'll have the big update for you on the fourth stimulus check package. I'll be going over the different reconciliations that the Schumer can now do, the checklist that's at issue. Meantime, I'll be going over the big details about what's happening. A press conference is about to go live, and I'll break into that as soon as it happens. New statements from Jamie Dimon and the impact of that on FANG stocks, and what you should do if you're missing a stimulus check, whether it's mailed or whether you got an extra check. It's a big day across the board, and I'm so excited for you as we go into a big morning. It's a big, exciting day. It's finally landed, and away we go as mornings LALATE brings the coffee, the toast, the butter, but you still forgot to bring the bacon. This is a major startup for this morning on Mornings LALATE.
Mornings, LALATE.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. How are you? It is a big day, and congratulations. That $1,400 third stimulus check finally landed. It finally landed. It took an act of faith for a lot of people to wonder why certain banks were not telling you it was coming, why the IRS tool said it was not coming, but it came. And congratulations to the millions and millions of viewers to some of those wonderful messages, and congratulations if you're tuning in as well and got that $1,400 third stimulus check. In this video, I'll be going over that, missing checks, and what's going on with those reoccurring monthly stimulus checks under the fourth stimulus check package. I'll have your fourth stimulus check update in this video as well, and I'll be cutting into the live video from the press secretary as soon as she goes live. First, if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. It's a big day with a lot of breaking news. I don't want you to miss anything, and I don't want you to miss the big details. And as soon as the press secretary goes live, we will cut into that. Also, like this video, and if you've not become a member, consider becoming a member, Purple Hawk, Purple Power, or Calcino VIP. The big exciting news is that those checks are landing. Those checks have landed, and away we go. $1,400 third stimulus checks landed today, April 7th, by direct deposit. Comerica, Direct Express Card, Chase, all the biggies. Boy, I had viewers who were sending me DMs just 24 hours ago saying, finally, I saw a pending alert. Finally, I saw something coming in. And then others have nothing pending at all, and suddenly it showed up. The great news is that $1,400 third stimulus check is landing across the board for millions of viewers today. Congratulations, you finally got that $1,400 third stimulus check. Now, what happens if you're a mailed check recipient? This is what you need to know. Those March 26 checks are late at about 10 days to them. The April 2nd to 5th checks, they're late at about 10 days to them. And the April 7th, actually 9th checks, they're about 10 days. Meantime, if you do not have a stimulus check pending by direct deposit at the time of this recording or live broadcast, wait, because guess what? It's early. You have the whole day for the deposit to appear in the bank account, especially if you're on the West Coast. It's too early to even expect the deposit to appear. They have till 5 o'clock banking hours where you are to make the deposit available to you. Second, wait till tomorrow. Deposits will still occur tomorrow. Third, check your mail. You need to check the mail because 50% of the viewers of this channel will still get the stimulus check by mail. If you got the first or second stimulus check by direct deposit, this one may be coming in the mail as well. Finally, if you watch the mail over the next week or two, it's still not there, wait for guidance from Treasury. I will have that guidance for you as well, how to request a missing stimulus check. This includes people who have a household of 4 people and they got 3 checks, but they didn't get 1. They're missing 1. I'll explain the guidance for that. So far, the guidance for first and second stimulus checks missing is filing a new tax return to request that missing stimulus check. Remember, If you are an American citizen, you're allowed to file a tax return voluntarily, even if you're not required to. And additionally, out of nowhere, I've had no less than about a dozen viewers said that they got an extra stimulus check today, and they don't know what to do with it. My advice, wait for IRS for that advice across the board. I'm seeing this happen actually a great deal of time. I'll be cutting to that live video from the press secretary as soon as she goes live in a second. But boy, away we go, because fourth stimulus is now hitting. Fourth stimulus is now really hitting. And what do you need to know? What you need to know is that Wall Street is waiting for it, and I'm waiting for it as well. That fourth stimulus package is really what's heating up because of what the Chuck. On Monday, Chuck Schumer won a major reconciliation award, and the press secretary is about to go live. So let me cut into the live feed as she joins us within seconds. On Monday, Chuck Schumer won a major award for a ruling on the reconciliation. His ruling sets up multiple stimulus checks. As one viewer said to me in a DM overnight, does that mean there could be recon stimulus checks throughout the end of the year? Absolutely. Absolutely. What's important to understand is that on Monday, the ruling was the following. The Senate parliamentarian ruled that the last reconciliation can be amended, and can be amended with a new stimulus package, so you don't have to use up a new reconciliation. How does this work, and what does this mean? Basically, the way it works is the following. Every spring and fall, you have one reconciliation. You have one in the spring and you have one in the fall. Well, the Democrats didn't use last year's reconciliation. They didn't use the fall reconciliation from 2020. They saved it because they knew that Biden was coming in January. So they used that for the third stimulus that just passed. Now, the ruling by the parliamentarian is they can amend that third stimulus for the fourth stimulus package of stimulus checks. And then, if Schumer then wishes to, he can use his leftover new stimulus recon for 2020 spring for fifth stimulus. And then the fall, away goes. He gets a brand new recon in September for sixth stimulus. This means incredible relief across the board. Suddenly you could see stimulus checks going into next year. Would it likely? Yes. And here's the press secretary. Let me join her live right now.
Good afternoon. Okay. Joining us today is another member of the President's Jobs Cabinet, Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo. As you all know, the Secretary was the first woman to be governor of Rhode Island, where she kick-started the state's economy and achieved a record number of jobs and the lowest unemployment in a generation, thanks to investments in infrastructure, education, and job training. As governor, she prioritized creating jobs, supporting workers, and improving the quality and availability of services in the care economy, including supporting wage increases for care workers. She also served as chair of the Democratic Governors Association in 2019. In 2010, she was elected General Treasurer of Rhode Island, receiving the largest number of votes of any statewide candidate. When she took office as General Treasurer, she tackled the state's $7 billion unfunded pension liability. Secretary is focused on a simple but vital mission to spur good-paying jobs, empower entrepreneurs to innovate, and grow and help American workers and businesses compete. As always, she can stay for a few questions. I'll be the bad cop, and with that, we'll turn it over to the Secretary.
Thank you, Jen. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see all of you, and it's an honor for me to be here to talk a little bit about President Biden's American Jobs Plan. At its core, the American Jobs Plan is about making sure every American has the opportunity to get a decent job, a decent, well-paying job with dignity and has opportunity. It's a historic investment in America intended to create tens of millions of jobs, rebuild our country's infrastructure, and position the United States to outcompete China. Many have commented that it's large, it's bold, it's necessarily large, because frankly we're behind, and we've neglected for too long important investments in our infrastructure. We need to ensure that investments in infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, workforce development, and our care economy are made at the scale we need, and are made in every single community in America. And as the president has led us to, is leading us to Build Back Better, that means we need to do so more inclusively and ensure that these investments that we are making in broadband, in housing, in the care economy, in water, are in every community in America, rural, tribal, urban, communities of color, and reaching everyone across America.
What you're listening to now is a live broadcast from the White House, a press briefing about your fourth stimulus package.
So why does that matter? It matters because it makes it harder for small businesses to compete. It matters because it makes it harder for American companies to compete, and it makes it harder for the average American to get a decent job and to get the skills they need in order to get a high-paying job in the industries that are growing today and tomorrow. And the fact of the matter is, we know that lack of investment, particularly in public transportation, transit, water, housing, has hurt low-income folks and people of color the most. And it's time to finally rectify that systemic inequality and build back better and more equally. As Jen said, my job as a Commerce Secretary is to do everything I can to enable American businesses of all sizes to compete. And at its core, the American Jobs Plan is about investing in American competitiveness, strengthening our workforce, rebuilding infrastructure, and leveling the playing field so all Americans have a shot at a good job. Now, prior to being Commerce Secretary, I was governor for 6 years. Prior to that, I was in the private sector. And so over the course of my career as an entrepreneur, as governor, now as Commerce Secretary, I have had many discussions with businesses, from the biggest to the smallest. And over the years, there is something that we all seem to agree on, which is that we need to make massive investments in our infrastructure if we are going to compete and ensure America's global competitiveness. And most recently, I have spent a lot of time in the past few weeks talking to business leaders, and I can report to you that there's a broad level of enthusiasm for big investments in infrastructure. And I think there is a recognition that President Biden is doing the right thing in pushing us to conceive of infrastructure as broad, as including investments in STEM, research and development, investments in basic research, investments in broadband, investments in training our workforce. And the truth of it is, that's what it's going to take to compete. A key component of the American Jobs Plan is training our workforce. This is a reality. The changes in the American economy, many of which have been massively accelerated by COVID, are very scary for millions of Americans.
What you're watching right now is a live broadcast from the White House of your Commerce Secretary. She's giving incredible detail about what is in the fourth stimulus package, item by item. We haven't heard this type of detail before.
Of course. Now, as Jen said, this was a priority of mine when I was governor, and I saw it work. I know it works. We saw it work. When I ran for governor, my state, Rhode Island, if you haven't been, I want you to go, had the highest unemployment rate in the country, #1 in America. It was sad, very sad. The unemployment rate in the building trades when I took over was over 20%. Think about what that does to a community. Before COVID, after a lot of our work, Rhode Island had more jobs than at any time in our state's history, because we leaned into it in a broad fashion, similar to what this package calls for: investments in infrastructure, working with business, and big investments in worker training. So the fact of the matter is, in order to compete, we have to have investments in apprenticeships, community colleges, STEM education, job training. My view is, if you have the guts in the middle of your career to go out and get some job training, to retrain yourself to get a new job, then we need to be there for you to provide high quality, demand-driven, affordable, if not free, job training. The American Jobs Plan also is about strengthening our supply chains. making things in America, making critical goods in America, creating good jobs in the process, and increasing the security that we have, knowing that we aren't overly dependent on other countries for critical supplies. We saw that on full display in COVID. Every governor knows what it's like to be up in the middle of the night, can't get your hands on PPE or ventilators or medicine because they aren't manufactured in America. We also need to invest in domestic manufacturing, particularly for critical industries like semiconductors. We all know semiconductors are the building blocks of our future economy. And as we go through the data and digital revolution, semiconductors underpin so much of the new technology where we'll see job creation. So we are living through now a global chip shortage. We're seeing that hurt businesses in every sector, and so we need to strengthen our domestic supply chains. The American Jobs Plan calls for a $50 billion investment in semiconductor manufacturing and research, as is called for in the Bipartisan CHIPS Act. Finally, we need strong investments in our broadband infrastructure. We've seen more clearly than ever before that high-quality, affordable broadband isn't a luxury, but it's a necessity for education, jobs, and healthcare. But millions and millions of Americans don't have access to broadband, particularly in rural communities. I finally want to address one last component, which is the investments in the care economy. You might say to yourself, why is the Commerce
You're watching a
Secretary
live
talking
briefing
about
from your
investments in the care
Commerce
economy?
Secretary,
Because
giving
it
incredible
matters. It
detail
is
about
core
what
to
is
our
in the
competitiveness.
fourth stimulus package. For the first time ever, we've gotten incredible detail across the board from your Commerce Secretary, who previously led infrastructure and similar type of packages while governor of Rhode Island. Let's continue to listen in.
For our loved ones living in poverty. It's time to make those investments so they can have a dignified job and so that we can shore up our communities. As Jen said, I did a lot of work of this as governor, and it's something that I'm very proud of President Biden and to be on the team of a president who's investing in the care economy. So fundamentally, this plan invests in American workers and businesses, small and large alike, so they can compete and win in the global marketplace. And I'm psyched to talk to you about it and proud to be on the team that's going to get this done.
All right, Kristen.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Secretary Raimondo, for being here. As you know, some Republicans have looked at this plan and said if you increase the corporate tax rate overall, in the long run, jobs could be eliminated. They cite one study, the Tax Foundation, that says that increasing the corporate tax rate will eliminate 159,000 jobs over the next 10 to 30 years. How do you respond to that criticism that in the long run, this plan kills jobs?
I don't agree with that assessment. So a few points. First of all, every business leader I talk to, big and small, agrees we must make these investments in infrastructure in order to compete. If we don't invest in semiconductors, we're going to fall further behind. If we don't invest in job training, we're not going to have the workforce that businesses need to compete. So it's essential that we make these investments. With respect to taxes, there is not a shred of evidence to show that the cuts in 2017 increased growth or productivity. Actually, very little of it went into additional R&D. So the fact of the matter is the corporate structure today is broken. Many companies don't, large profitable companies pay no corporate taxes. So I'd like to think we can all agree that it needs to be improved, level the playing field, close the loopholes, and have a discussion around how we do this together to improve competitiveness.
If it is raised to 28%, though, that would put the U.S. at one of the highest in the world. Does it have to be 28%? Would you go lower? Could you accomplish the same thing if the tax rate weren't raised to 28%?
So there is room for compromise. That is clear. The President has said a few things. We have to get this investment done. He's charged us to work across the aisle and in a bipartisan way, and we need to pay for what we're doing. Like our proposal is to invest in 8 years and pay back over 15. Now we can have a discussion about that. Should we pay it back over 20 instead of 15? Is the rate not quite 28? Is it something, lower? So we want to compromise. What we cannot do, and what I am imploring the business community not to do, is to say, we don't like 28, we're walking away, we're not discussing. That's unacceptable. Come to the table and problem solve with us to come up with a reasonable, responsible plan.
Thank you.
Mario.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Two questions for you. On the infrastructure side, how do you
You're hearing incredible questions and answers for the first time ever, asking about the fourth stimulus package. The message just a second ago was, why would the president propose 28%, which is higher than most world averages? This is what Manchin said, that he would do 25%, that 21% where it currently is too low. Ultimately, the president has yet to give justification where the number 28% came from. For purposes of you want the compromise, and Democrats are not on board with the president at 28%. That's what the press secretary has really not honed in on, is that the president does not have support from his own party at 28%, but they also don't have support for the current level, which is 21%. Somewhere close in between is what Manchin's proposing, 25%. The Commerce Secretary minutes ago said she would not be against doing a lower percentage.
And prioritizing those who have been left behind. With respect to the job training, I can fall on my own experience. We did a Back to Work Rhode Island Job Training Initiative, and we said we're going to make sure it's equitable. More than half of the people trained were women. More than 25% were people of color. If you commit yourself to it, which is what we will do under the president's leadership, we will make sure to make up for the fact that, as you say, in the past that hasn't been done.
Alex.
Thank you. What is the status and direction of the China tech policy review? And more specifically, what about TikTok?
Yeah. So I'll say quickly, we need to play offense and defense. The jobs package is offense. Invest in America, competitiveness, so we can play offense. A lot of the tools that Commerce has are defense. The entities list, tariffs, et cetera. So we are, led by Jake Sullivan and our team, Interagency Review. We're in the process of doing it now. A lot of people have said, is Huawei going to stay on the entity list? I have no reason to believe that they won't, but we're kind of in the middle of the overall review of China policy.
How close is that to being complete?
I would actually defer that more to the White House, but I would say we're in the thick of it right now. Like, we're working as aggressively as we can. We're not wasting time on it.
Thank you, Secretary. I hope to draw on your experience as governor regarding the virus. The White House and the president have been calling on governors across the country not to roll back virus restrictions.
I'll cut away and we'll rejoin the secretary in a second. But let me tell you where we are right now. A $1,400 third stimulus checks landed in bank accounts today. And this is for Direct Express by Comerica, also the big banks like Bank America, Chase, and more. If you did not see the pending deposit yet today, don't worry, you have a full day. The deposit can appear anytime during banking hours between now and the end of the day. That's the first thing to know. Second, if you go to the end of the day and you don't show it pending in the deposit, what should you do then? What should you do if you go to 5 o'clock your time locally and you don't see those deposits at post? You should still wait, because there's a couple things at issue. First, at issue is that it may be coming by check. And if you in the mail, and if you have not watched the mail, please do wait for that deposit. Number one, wait for that deposit. And I don't mean just wait till today, wait till tomorrow as well. Second, check the mail. You may be a mail recipient of the check. Nearly 50% of the viewers of this channel who were set up for direct deposit are getting it in the mail, not by direct deposit. There's no organization as to why or who. Third, if you still don't get the check in a few weeks from now, stay with me, because IRS is going to have guidance as to how to request the missing stimulus check. This includes households where maybe a 4-person household and you're missing one of the 3 checks. IRS has already said the first and second stimulus checks you can request by a tax return. And the third stimulus check, we haven't gotten guidance about that. Finally, if you got an extra check, which has actually been happening today, I don't know how to deal with that situation at all. IRS is about to give advisory about that as well. For the mail checks, there's a delay on those. So the March 26th checks add about 10 days. The April 2nd to 5th checks add about 10 days. This week's checks are April 9th, add about 10 days for that as well. What's important to understand is that forced stimulus is really where the heat is heating up right now. That's what the Commerce Secretary is talking about. She wants to talk about water. I want to talk about checks. Those checks are what the Democrats in the Senate are going to put in there when the bill lands there by reconciliation. They have to do reconciliation because no matter what the press secretary, no matter what the Commerce Secretary says, no Republican is going to go to 25%. The current proposal of the Biden administration is 28%. Manchin gave a great comment, which was this one yesterday, which is global economies are generally at 25. I'll go to 25. It's not particularly true. Global economies are at 10%, lower than our 21. But it signals that the bill has to go by recon. It has to go by recon. And that's why that Schumer win is so big. Viewers of this channel need to take these videos and share them on Facebook and social media and Twitter and hashtag MSC, hashtag Purple Power, because you need this to-do list to be done. Ultimately, Republicans are not going to give you a penny for a stimulus check. The Democrats will. They want to do those multiple stimulus checks. Second, there's a push still for FPUC retro. This is that unpaid FPUC from last year, from July to December. Before I continue on the to-do list, let me give you an aside. I've had a lot of people, and saw someone in the live chat right now, that asked about this thing that they have to reapply for unemployment benefits. Yes, it's very, very common in the last 7 days. Countless states are asking you to recertify and reapply for benefits. Reach out to your state, wait for the cumulative messages to come in from your state, because they start one way and they contradict in a day or two later. So wait before you jump on the first message. You may get a different message 2 days later from your state that is different than the first. And then they're going to ask you to recertify for benefits. Every state is different, but it is common. You are not an anomaly. It's happening. Third, SSI reform. There is a push by the Biden administration to give help for elderly. The question is, what is the SSI reform the president would do? He could certainly do the CPIE, which would take away COLA and put it to CPIE, and he could do the up to, not everyone, certain people, up to 20% increase. But it's the MSC that you want to get behind. Hazard pay is still possible, and certainly minimum wage as well. Let's cut back into what what the Commerce Secretary is saying right now about the forced stimulus package.
He says it could end up looking one that's more directly targeted at what he's calling hard infrastructure. Is that an accurate prediction to you at this stage? And then my second question, I'll just tack it on here. The president, you're one of the 5 cabinet secretaries that President Biden tapped to kind of go out and sell this, his words, to engage the public. What has that entailed at this point, specifically as it relates to getting these Republicans on board with this plan?
Talking to them, sitting down, listening, engaging them. As I said before, we have put forth a bold proposal and a reasonable way to pay for it. There are other ideas. So what I'm going to do, and all the cabinet is doing it in the White House, is sitting down with our Republicans, friends, and Democrats, and business leaders, and saying, okay, if you don't like this, what's your idea? How do you think we ought to pay for it? If we are proposing paying for it over 15 years. What do you think? So I think, again, it's all about finding that compromise and actually delivering for the American people. So that, anyway, I think broad engagement.
Face-to-face conversations with?
If you include Zoom as face-to-face, I would say very many. Only a few actually face-to-face, but a lot, a lot. And I plan to do even more of it. We're serious about this. We want to get this done. There's a lot of different ways to do it. The president does what a leader does, puts forth his ideas. Now let's get to work. Let's talk about it. Where do we tweak it? Where do we change it? With respect to Senator Coons, I am not going to disagree with his assessment because he's been up here longer than my 4 weeks. But, look, I think it's early to say. The president put his plan out a week ago. Let's give it a shot. Let's go big. I can tell you this, every single business leader I've talked to applauds the fact that this package is more than just roads, bridges, and water. Come on, 35% of Americans in rural areas don't have broadband. You cannot have a modern economy without that. We have a crisis in semiconductor manufacturing. You cannot have a modern economy without that. So I hope that that isn't where we settle, because we'd be shortchanging American people, workers, and businesses.
Would you take one more?
All right, Jeff, you're so convincing.
Thank you. Secretary, just to follow up on Alex's question about TikTok, can you just clarify what your...
And there you are. You've been listening to the Commerce Secretary give you an incredible briefing with incredible detail, actually perhaps the most detail we have seen to date about what's going on for this fourth stimulus package. What's the biggest takeaway that you should hear from this video is the following. Engagement. They want to hear from you. They want to hear from you. Now, they were asked specifically, are you talking to Republicans? But they were also asked, or the Commerce Secretary was also asked, who else have you spoken to? Have you spoken to other Democrats? Have you spoken to other business leaders? Have you spoken to the American people? Well, you're watching this video, and you're millions of viewers a day. You have a voice. Get that voice heard. If you have a message to send to the Commerce Secretary, send her the message. If you have a message to send to the president, send them a message. Call them on the phone. Write them a letter. Send them a message. Go on social media and take this video and hashtag MSC, hashtag Purple Power. But if you have an additional message beyond that, send that message as well. There's a lot of things that are going to be put into an infrastructure bill. If you've been with me since 2020, you certainly remember that the HEROES Act from Nancy Pelosi was supposed to be a stimulus package, but across the board, it proposed a lot of other things that included fixing buildings and including salary raises. Democrats are not adverse to putting non-infrastructure items in an infrastructure bill. Hence why 21 of 50 Democrats want stimulus checks in a bill that talks about water. I got it. You got it. Now is the time to push, because now is the point of engagement. The important understanding of the timeline, I think I have that graphic here, is that you want this engagement between you and the parties involved done now, because there's a time frame at issue. Here it is. You know, we're focusing on getting this big money, a third stimulus right now. This is rent, utilities, and food. I'll be covering the video right after this. And then May, we're doing as well. But June is when this bill is going to land in the Senate. So you got to get this done right now. You need to push Purple Power with sharing these videos, tagging them, hashtag MSC, hashtag Purple Power, and anything else that you want to say. Call your elected officials who are Democrats and House members. Say you need this in this. Contact the Commerce Secretary and their departments. Clearly, the Commerce Secretary does not get calls from the American people about ideas. So be professional and reach out to them and say, this is my message. And there you see, if you got this bill out the door in June, you could get paid in July. This is why this is so important. I thank you for joining me on a big morning of Mornings LA. I see Slap in the room, and I see Dima, and I see Debbie and Chris. And there's Jenny and American Pharaoh, and DeForce and Barbara, and Cheryl and Crystal, and Bonita as well. Thank you for joining me on a big Mornings LA. And I'm back with you for more, so make sure you subscribe. And throughout the day, I'll be giving you the big updates. And boy, I had a lot more to cover in this video, so that's going to be kept for the next one. If you've not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Also, like this video. And if you're not become a member, consider becoming a member. Purple Hawk, Purple Power, Calcino VIP. The link's at the top of the chat. Or, yeah, my finger somewhere. Up here and down here. Stay informed, stay focused, keep on smiling, have a great morning. Don't spend all that money at the casino tonight. And stay with LA for more.